Perhaps our problems were inevitable. I was a natural scientist, a physicist to be precise, and Tilly was an economist with a strong background in social sciences. Though neither of us worked in those fields anymore, our academic roots spoke volumes about how we approached life. I believed in absolutes, not in everything, of course, but I had faith in unchanging truths like the laws of nature. Gravity, for example, was constant. Tilly, on the other hand, also believed in truths but made room for exceptions. Even for gravity. It's always true, Tilly, I argued. Gravity is constant. For now, she replied with a smirk. You can't tell me that somewhere out there, in this infinite universe, there isn't a single case where it might not work. We laughed, knowing neither of us could convince the other. Our debates rarely changed minds, but we enjoyed the exchange nonetheless. We had a good marriage in that sense. We weren't in the league of Gates or Bezos when it came to wealth, but we were comfortable. I managed big data through actuarial analysis, while Tilly led a sales team of 24 at a regional brokerage that was expanding rapidly. We had enough money for the present and the future. Our home, a lovely 4-bedroom house with a backyard pool and hot tub, was our sanctuary. We also shared a summer home up north with Tilly's sister Margie and her husband Nate, which gave us a cool escape when the temperatures climbed. Our family life was fulfilling. Our eldest daughter, Annette, had just started first grade, and our youngest, Kylie, had recently outgrown diapers. They were both adorable, energetic, well-mannered, and deeply loved. I had hinted at the possibility of a third child, maybe a boy this time, but Tilly wasn't as enthusiastic. After Kylie, it had taken her nearly 2 years to get back to her ideal weight and tone, and I understood her hesitations. It wasn't a big deal for me. I loved our family as it was. When it came to intimacy, I wouldn't say we were the boldest lovers in the world, but we certainly weren't shy either. Whether it was in bed, on the sofa, in the jacuzzi, or even in the hammock, though that required some caution, we always found ways to enjoy each other. There was no such thing as a bad night in our marriage, at least not in that department. Our relationship was well balanced. Sometimes I leaned on her more than I gave back, like when I had a big project at work or when my dad suffered a stroke, leaving my mom in need of help around the house. Other times, she leaned on me, like when she had business trips to manage or needed to stay with her sister during Margie's breast cancer diagnosis. Somehow, the scales always seemed to balance over time. So where did we go wrong? The seeds of our discontent were sown from the very beginning of our relationship. We were who we were, but neither of us fully acknowledged the depth of our differences. We assumed they weren't significant enough to matter, so we never fully discussed our expectations. I loved her and she loved me. What else could possibly matter? As it turned out, a lot more mattered than we thought. At least that's what I'm left with now. Who knows if it's true or not? Tilly always understood people better than I did, and even if we had made a wrong turn at the beginning, it took years for the cracks in our foundation to show. For a long time, we led blissful lives, completely unaware of the growing void beneath our marriage. Dad, why can't Kylie and I go too? Annie's voice carried a hint of frustration. She was resourceful and a little spoiled, and Tilly and I adored both our daughters. We rarely left them with nannies or our parents unless absolutely necessary. But tonight was different. Tilly was being recognized at her firm's gala for securing 3 massive accounts, including a software titan and 2 family offices that collectively controlled over $2 billion in assets. We decided to spend the night at the hotel where the celebration was taking place. This party is for adults only, honey, I explained gently. But I promise we'll celebrate together as a family tomorrow night. Okay? I wish I could go with you, Annie pouted. I know, darling, but tomorrow night we'll catch up on everything, I reassured her. Fate is often decided by insignificant details, Those little things like blood cells coursing through the body, abundant and seemingly trivial on their own. I parked Tilly's dark blue BMW 5 Series sedan in the hotel's underground garage. As we stepped into the elevator, I suddenly realized I had forgotten my parking ticket. If it were a municipal lot, I wouldn't have cared, but this hotel charged $40 for overnight parking. Annoyed, I kissed Tilly as we reached the lobby, dropped her off, and pressed the button to return to the garage. It only took me a few minutes to retrieve the ticket from my coat pocket and return to the lobby. When I walked through the ballroom doors, however, I froze. Tilly was already inside. Her jacket was off, and she was chatting with a man I didn't recognize. Something about the scene gave me pause, not because of anything overtly inappropriate, but because of the ease and familiarity between them. They stood close, and the man leaned in, saying something that made her laugh. A little too loudly, a little too warmly. I shook off the unease and approached, forcing a smile. "Hey, sorry about that. I forgot the ticket in the car." Tilly turned to me, her face lighting up with a smile. "Oh, there you are. I was just catching up with an old friend. Dave, this is Marcus. He works with one of the firms I signed last year." "Nice to meet you, Marcus," I said, extending my hand. His grip was firm, his smile polite. "Likewise. Tilly speaks highly of you." Tilly stood across the room, talking to a tall man in a dark suit and a woman in a bright green silk dress. The woman was long and slender, athletic in build, but Tilly outshone her. My wife wore high-quality, classic clothing with the kind of effortless confidence that few could match. Her proportions were nearly perfect, both her facial features and her figure. Feminine and full of curves, she maintained her shape through almost an hour of exercise every day. But it wasn't just her appearance. It was the intelligence in her eyes, the grace of her movements, and the curve of her lips that had won my heart long ago. Watching her from across the room, I felt a familiar surge of infatuation, an electric pull in both my heart and, frankly, other places. She was breathtaking. It felt fitting, almost poetic, that in this moment of admiration, the lie would reveal itself. "I see Tilly didn't bring her husband with her tonight. Do you think Randy will get her again?" The voice came from behind me. I had just stepped into the coat room when I heard two men talking, their backs turned toward me. They didn't notice I was there. I froze. The words hit me like a physical blow. I immediately recognized one of the voices, Ted Masters, who had been on Tilly's sales team for 3 years. I didn't recognize the other man, but I knew the name he mentioned. Randy. He was the tall man standing with Tilly. In that moment, I experienced a kind of pain I had never known before, and I hope never to know again. It wasn't just heartbreak. It was an all-consuming agony, a wound so deep I doubted I would ever recover. I felt as if the ground had fallen out from under me. My world, the life I thought was secure and filled with love, shattered in an instant. But strangely, I also felt nothing. My survival instinct kicked in with a vengeance, shutting down the overwhelming pain so I could think clearly, or at least clearly enough to act. I didn't want to humiliate myself. I didn't want to show any vulnerability, especially not in public. My thoughts were far from rational, but something inside me guided my actions with a precision I would later be grateful for. I walked out of the coat room and headed straight for Tilly. My expression must have given me away, because her smile faded the moment she saw me. "The wardrobe is by the entrance, dear," I said curtly. "And could you bring me a glass of white wine on your way back?" I didn't waste time on pleasantries. My voice was cold, distant, and deliberate. Then, without waiting for her response, I delivered the blow. "I'm leaving, Tilly. I don't want to stop Randy from having you in his bed tonight." Again. Randy, who had just taken a sip of his whiskey, choked on it, coughing violently. Tilly's eyes widened, and tears immediately welled up as she looked at me, realizing that I knew. I knew everything. Her face crumpled, and in a trembling whisper, she said, "Oh no!" Her shock and despair were unmistakable. I turned and walked away without another word. Ted Masters, who had overheard everything, stood frozen, his face pale as a sheet. "Aaron!" Tilly called after me, her voice breaking. "Wait, please. I'll grab my coat and come with you." I ignored her. My pace quickened as I made my way to the stairs. I didn't run, but I didn't hesitate either. I left the garage so quickly that I didn't even have to pay for parking. Who says the universe doesn't bend toward justice? Thank God the girls were staying with Tilly's parents that night. As I drove, my mind raced, formulating plans. At worst, I figured I had a 4 or 5 minute head start. If Tilly apologized to the event organizers or asked for a taxi, I might have 10 minutes. Either way, I knew one thing: I couldn't stay at home. Like any wounded animal, I needed a safe place to retreat. Somewhere no one could witness my suffering, my shame, and the way it was about to break me. Because I knew it would break me. Soon. Then I laughed bitterly. I didn't need to go home. I had an overnight bag in the trunk. I didn't want to hide forever, but I wasn't going to make it easy for her to confront me, either. I found an ATM and withdrew the maximum amount of cash. Then I drove to a modest roadside inn, where I paid for a room in cash and turned off my phone. Leaving it on the nightstand, I walked to a nearby Red Robin for dinner. I ordered a burger, salad, and a beer. Just one. I'd never seen the point in drinking excessively. The data is pretty clear about the long-term effects. Besides, I didn't need alcohol to punish myself. The pain would take care of that on its own. I ate slowly, trying to deflect my inner turmoil. Out in public, I could pretend, if only for a little while, that everything was okay. But the act was exhausting, and my facade was starting to crack. I left a generous tip on the table, not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't stand the thought of waiting for change. I just needed to leave. Back in the locked solitude of my room, the dam finally broke. Sobs racked my body as I collapsed onto the bed. Grabbing a pillow, I buried my face into it, trying to muffle the sound. From the depths of my broken heart, the pain poured out. It was raw, overwhelming, and inescapable. For the first time, I allowed myself to fully feel the weight of what had happened. Tilly's betrayal wasn't just a betrayal of our marriage. It was a betrayal of the life we had built together, the trust one had placed in her, and the love I had believed was unshakable. The night stretched on, endless and unforgiving. In that quiet room, surrounded by nothing but my anguish, I was forced to confront a single, devastating truth. A howl tore through me, raw and visceral. If anyone had been close enough to hear, I'm certain it would have shaken them to their core. I screamed and cried into the pillow, releasing all the pain that twisted in my chest and tore at my heart. I don't know how long I screamed, but when I finally collapsed onto the floor, the pillow was soaked, drenched with saliva, tears, and snot. I threw the ruined pillow into the corner of the room. There were 3 more on the bed and 2 on the shelf in the closet. I knew I'd need them, if not tonight, then by morning. I've devastated my husband. Aaron's voice was cold, his tone detached, but his eyes betrayed him. They were filled with so much pain it was unbearable to look at. He knew. My breath caught in my throat, and I froze in place. I wanted to run to him, to hold him, to comfort him and beg for forgiveness. I wanted to take away the hurt I'd caused, but I couldn't move. Our gazes locked for what felt like an eternity. I don't even remember if I said anything. I just stood there, paralyzed, as Aaron turned his back on me and walked away, passing Ted Masters without a word. "Aaron, wait!" I called, my voice trembling. "Please, let me grab my coat. I'll come with you." But he didn't stop. He didn't even acknowledge me. Panic surged through me as I turned to the closet, fumbling for my coat. I pressed the elevator button again and again, willing the doors to open faster. When I finally made it to the garage, I realized his car was gone. He had left without hesitation. Frustrated and desperate, I rushed back to the hotel lobby and out the main doors. Taxis were scarce, so I pulled out my phone and called for a ride. A blue Prius arrived 4 minutes later. Those 4 minutes felt like a lifetime, but the 20-minute ride that followed felt even longer. I used the time to compose myself enough to text Jim and Frank, offering a quick apology and explaining that Aaron had experienced a sudden health issue. I expressed my regret for leaving the event early. Their responses came immediately, understanding but disappointed. Yet none of it mattered to me. My thoughts were consumed with Aaron. Aaron has always seen the world in black and white. It's one of the things I loved most about him. His clarity, his integrity, and his unwavering sense of right and wrong. It all made him who he was. I loved him for his intelligence, his playfulness, his devotion to our daughters, and his commitment to me. But where Aaron saw absolutes, I saw nuances. And tonight, I realized how vast that difference truly was. Aaron's commitment to me was complete, absolute. Mine was just as strong. At least that's how I had always believed it. But I knew he wouldn't see it the same way. For Aaron, fidelity wasn't something you negotiated or justified. For me, it wasn't so clear-cut. Intimacy outside our marriage had never intruded on my love for Aaron or the life we built together. To me, it was irrelevant. It didn't change the way I felt about him or our family. I loved him deeply, and that love only grew stronger with time. But sometimes, circumstances aligned, and I indulged in fleeting moments of intimacy. They were rare, always detached, and they never affected the core of our relationship, or so I thought. Since our wedding, I'd only had 3 such moments. The first was a one-time encounter with a salesman during a business conference. Then there was Randy. He joined my company almost 2 years ago, and we'd been intimate twice, both times during business trips. We never spent the night together, and I never planned for it to happen. It wasn't something I sought out. It just happened when the circumstances were right. To me, those brief encounters were insignificant. In 5 years, they added up to just a few hours of my life. I spent more time at the spa getting massages. But I knew Aaron wouldn't see it that way. To him, it didn't matter how rare or detached those moments were. To him, it was betrayal, pure and simple. When the taxi pulled up to our house, it was dark. Aaron wasn't home. Less than an hour ago, we'd left this house together, excited for the evening ahead. Now it felt hollow. The warmth, the love, the memories we had built within these walls. It all felt distant, like a dream slipping through my fingers. I stepped inside and walked through the quiet halls of our home. This was the house where we had raised Annie and Kylie, the house filled with laughter, joy, and the life we built together. But now it felt tainted. The memories that once brought me comfort and pride were now tinged with sadness and regret. I was scared. Scared of what would happen to our marriage, to our children, to our family. Scared that I had ruined everything. Would we ever recover? Could we? I changed into sweatpants and sheepskin slippers, seeking the smallest semblance of comfort, and settled into the family room to wait for Aaron. My phone was silent. We'd never been the kind of couple to track each other's locations, so I had no idea where he might be. All I could do was wait. As I sat there, I tried to think of what I would say to him, but every time I formed a sentence in my mind, it crumbled under the weight of my guilt. We needed to talk. That much was clear. Despite my reaction at the hotel, I knew I was good at handling difficult conversations when I could see the other person, when I could read their expressions hear the tone of their voice, and gauge their emotions. If I could just sit across from Aaron, or better yet, next to him, I'd have a chance. I didn't know if I could convince him to see things from my perspective, but at least it would be better than silence. So I waited. No matter how long it took, I would wait for him. And more than anything, I wanted him to know one thing. I loved him. He was, and always would be, the most important person in my life. I sat on the couch, my phone resting in my hands. For about 15 minutes, I drafted and deleted at least a dozen messages, each one trying to find the perfect balance of apology and hope. Finally, I settled on something simple. Please come home and talk to me. I love you. I sent it and waited. I slept surprisingly well that night, though not before one more hysterical breakdown. I cried until I was completely drained, my body giving in to emotional exhaustion. When I woke up, the room was still dark, but the clock showed I had slept almost 9 hours. My head felt clearer, but my body and mind still felt heavy, like I was wading through mud with every step. I showered but skipped shaving. There was no energy for pretense or polish. Around 7:30, I decided to stop by the original pancake house for breakfast. The coffee was hot and fresh, the pancakes were light and fluffy, but the sausage patty was greasy and far too fatty. Still, the bill was less than $20, so I left a generous tip. Even after breakfast, I felt restless. My usual workout was running, but I didn't have workout clothes or even a proper pair of shoes. Still, I couldn't just sit in my hotel room. I needed to move. I layered on a couple of t-shirts, the shirt from the night before, and a hoodie I had packed for the trip home, then headed to the park by the lake shore. The park was mostly empty, just a couple of joggers and a mother with 2 boys playing on the jungle gym. The solitude was welcome. I had time to think, and I needed that time. Tilly's mind was like quicksilver, flexible, fast, able to process information and adapt on the fly. Mine didn't work that way. I needed structure, focus, and a plan. Without that, any discussion we had would leave me at a disadvantage. I needed to prepare myself for the inevitable confrontation. I had no idea how she would try to justify her infidelity, but I knew she would try. I believed Tilly loved me, or at least I thought so, but I couldn't reconcile her betrayal with that belief. It didn't make sense, and I needed answers. As I walked along the trail, listening to the gentle lapping of the water against the shore and the earthy smell of the sleeping grass and trees, I did what I always did best. I organized my thoughts into categories. I brushed aside distractions and honed in on the questions that mattered most. By the time I returned to my hotel room, I had a plan. I didn't intend to read the questions to Tilly, but writing them down cemented them in my mind. I grabbed a notepad and began to write, "Why did you think you could break your promises to me?" I had little hope her answer would be satisfactory, but I needed to understand her mindset. Did you put my health at risk by having unprotected intimacy? If she had, it would show not just a lack of consideration but outright recklessness. How often did you sleep with Randy? Were there others? I believed she was fundamentally an honest person, even if her actions had betrayed me. She wasn't a skilled liar, and I was good at detecting lies. Why Randy? Do you love him? Do you want a relationship with him? Do you want to continue seeing him? These questions terrified me, but I needed the answers to understand what I was up against. How did your colleagues find out about your relationship? Were you shameless about it? Was this part of the corporate culture? The thought that their colleagues might have known, might have joked about it, cut me deeply. What do you think should happen next? What path forward do you see for us? Ultimately, this wouldn't be entirely her choice, but I was curious to hear her perspective. After writing them down, I sat back and stared at the list. The questions felt cold and clinical, but they reflected the clarity I needed to move forward. I knew the conversation with Tilly had to happen today or tomorrow. Couldn't wait. My priority was protecting our daughters, which meant ensuring that they came home to a stable environment, even if that stability was temporary and fragile. Until Tilly and I decided what path to take, we needed to shield Annie and Kylie from the fallout as much as possible. I felt mentally ready, but I was still nervous. I needed to relax and focus my energy on the conversation, not waste it on fear and distractions. The hotel had a small gym with a treadmill, so I walked for an hour, still dressed in jeans and a t-shirt. Afterward, I went to Red Robin for a bacon sandwich and coffee. Between the workout and the meal, I felt as ready as I could be for what lay ahead. I woke up on the couch with a stiff neck. As I turned my head, I grabbed my phone and checked for messages. There was nothing important. Aaron was still silent. I knew he needed time to process his feelings, but the longer he stayed away, the harder my task became. I could picture him vividly, running through scenarios in his mind, testing hypotheses, trying to make sense of what he couldn't understand. It was strange and deeply sad to know that I was the object of his thoughts. The guilt weighed on me like a stone. I knew I had hurt him, and I knew that when Aaron finally came to me, I would have to be honest, brutally honest. That honesty would hurt him even more, but I also hoped it might help cleanse the wound. Lies weren't an option. I've always believed that lies corrode and infect close relationships. In less important matters, I could lie to spare someone's feelings, but not here. This was too important. Only the complete truth would work. Everything depended on Aaron. I made myself a cup of coffee and tried to push the upcoming conversation out of my mind. I always performed better when others thought I wasn't fully prepared. Anticipating every possible scenario tended to leave me sluggish and overthinking. I knew my strength was in reading the moment, intuitively addressing what needed to be said, and quickly articulating my thoughts. So I deliberately avoided rehearsing. I wanted to save my energy for what really mattered. But as the morning dragged on without a word from Aaron, my anxiety grew. I called my parents to check on the girls and asked them to keep Annie and Kylie for one more night. They were happy to oblige, though Annie insisted on speaking with me. Dad said we're celebrating tonight. Her voice rang out. Celebrate? I'm sorry, sweetheart, but Daddy isn't feeling well today, I replied gently. But I promise we'll go out as a family as soon as we can. But Dad said tonight, she protested, her frustration bleeding through. Annie was so much like me, persistent, determined. But in every other way, she was her father's daughter. I know, honey, but sometimes plans have to change when things happen. I promise we'll celebrate together soon. The line went silent until my mother came back on, giggling. Someone's not happy at all. She's giving me that angry look you used to give me when you were her age. Thanks, Mom, I said with a weak smile. If anyone can handle her, it's you. Don't worry, she reassured me. Nothing a couple of cookies won't solve. Tell Aaron we hope he feels better soon. I will. Hug Kylie for me, too. I tried keeping busy. I did the laundry, cleaned up the kitchen, and sorted through the mail. But the tasks were small and mundane, nothing that could fully occupy my mind. It wasn't long before my thoughts returned to Aaron. I kept reminding myself that I couldn't predict his reaction until I saw him. Worrying about something I couldn't control was pointless. But with nothing else to distract me, my anxiety simmered beneath the surface. I considered taking a shower to kill some time, but I decided against it. I wanted to be ready for Aaron the moment he walked through the door. He needed to see me, to know that he was the most important person in the world to me, now and always. The waiting was torturous, but in a strange way it was also therapeutic. I hated doing nothing, but the memories of Aaron and me kept creeping into my mind, and for a moment they brought me peace. I thought about our first date, a standard dinner and a movie evening. Aaron suggested an Italian restaurant, a safe choice, but inside he took a risk by ordering a dish called linguine Davis. We shared a massive lasagna, and I took home his leftover spaghetti carbonara. We discovered we both loved the Coen brothers, though I insisted Raising Arizona was their best film while he raved about Barton Fink. To be honest, I never really liked Barton Fink, but I loved listening to him passionately explain why it was brilliant. I thought about the first time we made love. My sister Margie and I were living together while I finished my studies, and she left for the weekend, giving us the space we needed. It was no secret what Aaron and I were planning that night. He showed up with a bottle of wine, we ordered pizza, and eventually we ended up in my bedroom. I was nervous, and he admitted he was too, though he didn't show it. And then there was his proposal. We talked about marriage, and I'd been waiting for him to pop the question. He missed a couple of perfect opportunities, Christmas and New Year's Eve, but when he finally did it, it was perfect. It was an ordinary Thursday night at his apartment. He cooked his signature pasta for dinner, and we watched Arrival. After the movie, he steered the conversation toward the film's central theme. If you knew you were going to be disappointed, would you still take the risk? The movie dealt with a child's illness, but Aaron framed the question around relationships, specifically marriage. Would you still get married if you knew it might end badly? He asked. When I said I would, he got down on one knee, pulled out a ring, and said, "Me too." As if summoned by my thoughts, I heard the garage door opening. My breath caught. I sighed deeply, 3 times, trying to steady myself. Then I sat down at the kitchen table with my coffee, deliberately positioning myself so I'd be the first thing he saw when he walked in. I opened the door from the garage into the kitchen. The first thing I saw was Tilly sitting at the table, a cup of coffee in front of her. She looked tense, her fingers wrapped tightly around the mug. This was a new situation for both of us. "Thank God you're home," she said, her voice trembling. "I was so worried about you. Are you okay? Is there anything I can do? Coffee? Lunch?" Her words tumbled out, one after another, her anxiety unmistakable. "No," I replied flatly. "I've already eaten. I'm gonna change clothes. We'll talk later. Okay?" "Okay, honey," she said softly, watching me closely. "I'm going to make some scrambled eggs. I was too worried to eat earlier. Are you sure you don't want anything?" "Sure," I said, already heading toward the stairs. As I passed through the family room, I glanced around. The room had always been the emotional center of our home, a place that felt steady and grounding, but now it felt strange. The usual sense of stability was missing. Nothing seemed out of place, just the rumpled blanket on the sectional sofa, which I assumed Tilly had used. Yet the atmosphere felt stagnant, like the life had been drained out of the space. Our bedroom felt the same. It wasn't the physical environment that had changed, it was me. My home no longer felt like my sanctuary, felt tainted. I unpacked my bag methodically, as if organizing my belongings could somehow bring order to the chaos inside me. The suit went over the back of a chair. It wasn't wrinkled enough to need the closet. T-shirts and jeans went straight into the laundry basket, along with my socks and boxers. I put my toiletries in their usual spot and hung my hoodie in the closet. Finally, I put on sweatpants, a long-sleeve t-shirt, and my favorite cotton sweater, finishing with a pair of Skechers sneakers. When I walked back to the kitchen, Tilly was at the stove, stirring scrambled eggs. The smell was familiar and comforting. Her eggs were legendary, unmatched by any restaurant. The girls adored them. I sat down at the table, choosing the seat directly opposite hers. Normally, Tilly preferred us to sit next to each other when we talked about something serious, but this wasn't a normal conversation. Sitting across from her gave me a better view of her reactions. I took a deep breath, letting it out slowly, quietly. I mentally rehearsed my questions, steeling myself for what was to come. When Aaron walked into the kitchen, something about him felt off. His outfit was mismatched: beige jeans, a green hoodie, and his scuffed brownish-red boots. He hadn't shaved, which was entirely unlike him. But it wasn't his appearance that struck me the most. It was his eyes. I didn't expect the usual warmth or joy that lit up his face when he looked at me. I didn't even expect anger or pain, though I was prepared for both. Instead, what I saw was worse: distance. His eyes were detached, clinical, as if he had switched into work mode. I needed him in husband mode, the mode where we tackled problems together, where we made decisions for our family. But this was something else entirely. "Thank God you're home, honey," I said, my words rushing out. "I was so worried about you. Are you okay? Is there anything I can do? Coffee? Lunch?" "No," he replied curtly. "I've already eaten. I'm gonna change clothes. We'll talk later." Work mode. Definitely. "Okay, honey," I said softly, turning back to the stove. "I'm just making some scrambled eggs. I was too worried to eat earlier. Are you sure you don't want any?" "I'm sure." He turned and walked upstairs without another word. I sighed and stirred the eggs, adding a bit of grated Parmesan. Annie loved them like this, and Kylie ate them only because her big sister loved them. The scent filled the kitchen, but I barely noticed it. My mind was consumed with the impending conversation. When Aaron returned, he sat across from me again. I heard him exhale slowly, and the weight of the moment settled over us. This wasn't how I wanted to start. I needed to ease him into this to soften the tension between us. "I don't want to do this in the kitchen, Aaron," I said cautiously. "Let me eat quickly, and we can move to the family room." The family room was where we kept most of our family photos and mementos. Our daughter's toys, treasures from our parents, and souvenirs from our honeymoon. It was our loving space, and I hoped being there might help remind him of the life we'd built together. "The kitchen is fine," he said flatly. I hesitated but decided not to push. "Okay, but can we wait until I finish eating? I want to give you my full attention." "Certainly," he replied, his tone polite but distant. I stirred the eggs one last time. "Where did you stay last night?" "Residence Inn." "I see you brought your bag home. Will you be staying tonight?" "I haven't decided yet." I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady. "I told Annie that we'd go to a restaurant as a family to celebrate your award. I called Mom and asked her to keep the kids one more night. I wasn't sure if you'd come home." Aaron nodded. "It's good that you did. How did Annie take the news?" He smiled faintly, and I felt a tiny flicker of relief. "Exactly how you'd expect," he said. I laughed, and for a brief moment, I felt the tension between us ease. Talking about the girls always had that effect. I plated the eggs and sat down next to him, surprising him with the move. Encouraged, I reached out and touched his forearm. He flinched, his body stiffening. "I'm sorry, Aaron," I said softly, my voice thick with emotion. He shrugged, brushing off my apology. I ate quickly, barely tasting the food, and then placed my plate in the dishwasher. After refreshing my coffee, I returned to my seat next to him. Aaron straightened up, his posture rigid. He was preparing himself. Work mode again. "I have questions about your connection, Tilly," he began, his voice steady but cold. "It wasn't a connection, honey," I said quickly. "It was just casual. A fling. Call it what you want," he said, his tone sharpening. "I consider it a connection. Why did you do it?" I sighed deeply. "I see how much I've hurt you, Aaron, and I'll answer all your questions. But I need you to understand it didn't mean anything to me. Not to me and not to us. It doesn't matter." "It matters to me," he replied, his voice firm. I nodded, realizing there was no avoiding the truth. Same reason why I sometimes order steak for dinner and sometimes a salad. Randy is attractive, funny, humble. He's just fun. We landed a big deal, so we went out for drinks to celebrate. We flirted like always. And then, well, I wanted him, and he wanted me. Aaron's eyebrows shot up. I laughed nervously and stood up, pacing the kitchen. We went to his room, and I left as soon as we finished. You still haven't said why, he said, his voice low but cutting. I froze, realizing that this was the crux of it, the Gordian knot we had to untangle. Aaron and I had always complemented each other, our different approaches working as strengths in our relationship. But now our differences felt like insurmountable obstacles. The thing with Randy was insignificant, I said, trying to meet Aaron's eyes, though he seemed determined not to look at me. It was like deciding what to order for dinner. It had nothing to do with you, our marriage, or our family. We were on a business trip, and it just happened. Aaron's expression didn't change. His voice was calm, but cold, cutting through my words like a blade. I can argue with almost everything you just said, Tilly. It is significant. It does have to do with me, our marriage, and our family. And it didn't just happen. I swallowed hard. You're right. I broke promises I made to you, and I hate that I hurt you. But I love you, Aaron. I love you so much that sometimes it overwhelms me. This thing with Randy, it doesn't mean anything. Not to me. Not to us. Aaron shook his head, his voice low but firm. It means everything. What does that mean? I asked, my voice shaking. I wasn't here, you didn't miss anything. And when I came home, I was just as loving, attentive, and involved as ever. It didn't change me or our marriage or our family in any way. You lied to me. I flinched. I didn't lie. I've never lied to you about anything important. Withholding the truth about something important is the same as lying, he countered. It didn't matter, I insisted. I don't tell you when I exercise on a business trip, what I eat for breakfast, or what car I rent. Felt the same, it didn't mean anything. I wouldn't lie to you, darling. Not about something that mattered. Aaron inhaled deeply, his eyes closing for a brief moment as he regrouped. Did you use protection? The question caught me off guard. I thought I'd been making progress, that he was starting to understand, so this sudden shift confused me. Still, I promised to answer all his questions. It was difficult, I began carefully, but yes, not the first time, though. After that, we did. Aaron's jaw tightened, and I could see the anger rising behind his measured demeanor. How many times has this happened? I hesitated, but there was no point in lying. 3. I've been with Randy 3 times. His jaw clenched further, his knuckles whitening as his hands curled into fists. Part of me hoped his anger would cloud his thinking, but another part knew it was better to rip the Band-Aid off quickly. Were you with anyone else? Yes, I admitted. Only one other person. It was a one-time thing years ago. I met him at a hotel and we hit it off. No one else but him and Randy. Aaron's eyes darkened, his face growing colder. I could see his composure slipping, his emotions boiling just beneath the surface. Have you been tested for STDs? He asked abruptly. What? No, I didn't think I needed to. We used protection with the first guy, and with Randy, it was only once without. So you put my health at risk, he said, his voice sharp and cutting. No, honey, no. I'm sure Randy's clean. He's not with anyone but his wife. What if he lied? What if she cheats on him like you cheated on me? The words hit me like a slap. I opened my mouth to respond but stopped myself just in time. He was hurt and he had every right to be. I'll get tested, I said softly. It's been over a year since I had unprotected sex, But if it'll ease your mind, I'll do it. It seems like the least you can do, he replied flatly. Okay, I'll arrange it. Whatever makes you feel better. It won't make me feel better, he said, his tone bitter. But it's one less thing to worry about. She answered my questions mechanically, like she was checking off a list. I could see her trying to stay calm, trying to find the words that would make this easier for me, or maybe for herself. So you've had sex with Randy 3 times in the last year? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Yes, she admitted. But it's not what you're imagining. It was never planned. We must have been on a dozen business trips together in that time, but it only happened on 3 of them. It wasn't ongoing, and we didn't spend the night together. We didn't rent rooms together. It just happened. Are you in love with Randy? Her answer came quickly, almost too quickly. In love? God, no. I could never love him or anyone else. You're my man, my partner, the love of my life. I stared at her, my mind racing. But you're sleeping with Randy, and you've slept with another man. How does that make sense? Tilly sighed deeply, her frustration and sadness written all over her face. I don't know how to make you understand, Aaron. Each of those times meant nothing. It was like scratching an itch, like going to a movie or a concert. It didn't affect how I feel about you. It didn't touch what we've built together. I shook my head, my voice tightening. I understand what you're saying. You think sex can be casual, without affection or emotion. Yes, she said, leaning forward. Exactly. You can see that, can't you? I felt something unraveling inside me, a knot of confusion loosening, though the weight in my chest remained. I see it, I admitted. I just don't agree. Her face fell, and for a moment, I thought I saw panic in her eyes. Come on, darling, she pleaded. You know it's true. Sometimes we make love tenderly and sweetly, and sometimes it's wild and crazy. Sex can be different things. It doesn't always have to mean the same thing. I looked at her, feeling the weight of her words but not finding comfort in them. Maybe it doesn't always mean the same thing, I said quietly, but it always meant something to me. Yeah, but no matter how we do it, Aaron said, his voice tight. I always do it with you and only you. That makes it special. It's special to me too, I replied quickly. I love being intimate with you. It's wonderful, so satisfying. But you've had sex with other guys too. His tone was flat, but the pain behind his words was unmistakable. I sighed, my chest tightening. And that means nothing to me. It means something to me, he shot back. He covered his mouth with his hand, squinting as if he were trying to think through the fog of his emotions. Before I could say anything else, he beat me to it. How many people know about this? The question hit me like a slap. What do you mean? Nobody knows about it, I said defensively. Aaron snorted. People definitely know about it. Do you think I just randomly found out? Out of all the questions he could have asked, this was the one I hadn't even considered. It had never occurred to me that anyone else could know. I assumed Aaron figured it out on his own. He was so good at connecting dots. But the idea that someone else might have told him floored me. Who told you? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Nobody told me, he said, his tone sharp. I overheard Ted Nurs talking about it with another guy last night. It didn't sound like a secret to them. I felt my stomach drop. Wow, I managed, stunned. My mind raced. Did my colleagues know? Could this spiral into a full-blown disaster? My professional reputation could be on the line. At least some of my team might know that I'd slept with a subordinate, which could lead to HR problems or worse, disciplinary action from Jim and Frank. And Randy? His wife had been right there when Aaron confronted me. Was he now dealing with his own marital crisis? Stress makes people unpredictable. What if he lashed out? But none of that mattered as much as Aaron. He was my husband, my partner, my anchor. Whatever the fallout at work, I'd deal with it later. Right now, I needed to focus on saving my marriage. I took a deep breath and tried to steady my voice. Darling, it doesn't matter who else knows. And I can see how much you're suffering. I want to help you heal. You caused this pain, Tilly? He said, his words cutting like shards of glass. I don't trust you to ease it. His response froze my heart in my chest. I opened my mouth to respond, but before I could, he hit me with another question. What do you see happening here? God bless him. His question was my lifeline. It was the most solid ground I could hope for. I love you, I said, my voice firm and steady for the first time. Now more than ever. And tomorrow, I'll love you even more. This is just noise, Aaron. I know it hurts, but I can heal this pain with love. It's nothing compared to the love we feel for each other, the family we've built together. We still have our wonderful future ahead of us. All the things we've talked about, dreamed about. I know you're hurting, and we have a lot of work ahead of us. But I've never been more confident that we're destined to spend our lives together. Aaron didn't answer. His gaze drifted into the distance, his face impassive. Tilly's words washed over me, but they didn't sink in. They were just words, noise like she'd said. Let's go to the family room and sit together, she said softly. I miss your touch, your hugs. We always feel better when we touch. You'll see that nothing has changed. I'm fine here, I replied, my voice distant. She stood, and I could see the hope in her eyes. But I didn't move. Not from the kitchen. Not from my position. Not from my stance. I watched her deflate, her shoulders sagging. She was trying to bridge the gap between us, but it felt like she was speaking a different language. We didn't see the world the same way. We never had. Darling, your pain is raw and overwhelming right now, she said, her voice trembling. Please don't withdraw into yourself. Let me help you find your center. Let me support you. I stood abruptly, and she mirrored me. I saw her flinch as I spoke. I'm not making any decisions right now. I need time to think. I'll let you know when I'm ready to discuss this further. Without waiting for a response, I grabbed my jacket and left. I wanted to go to the park. I loved being outside, especially when I needed to burn off restless energy. But I'd gone out without a jacket, and the chill of late autumn was too much. So I headed to the mall instead, walking through the hallways on each level twice. Eventually, I grabbed a slice of pepperoni pizza from Slice Brothers. It wasn't great, but I didn't care. My thoughts were louder than anything else. Tilly said her time with Randy didn't mean anything, but that wasn't true for me. She seemed sincere when she said she still loved me. But how could I be sure? She'd slept with Randy multiple times, and with a stranger once before. The frequency with Randy bothered me. 3 times in a year wasn't a lot, but it was enough to establish a pattern. Practice makes perfect, after all. They probably got better at understanding what drew them to each other, what fueled their desire, and acted on it more consciously each time. She was cheating on me. That wasn't the main thing, but it was important. Nobody wants to feel like a fool. If we stayed married, I'd have to face people who might already know about her betrayal. She had unprotected sex at least once, clearly not thinking about the husband who had been faithfully waiting for her at home. She claimed to love me, but her actions blurred the meaning of that love for me. Everything I'd heard pointed to casual, convenient sex on her part, which I could, on some level, understand. I understood the concept of casual intimacy, principle-wise. But damn, I couldn't wrap my head around how anyone could think sex wasn't significant enough to limit it to a committed relationship. I wouldn't judge others who made explicit agreements with their partners to allow for non-monogamy. But Tilly, my partner, she never pursued that conversation with me. We discussed exclusivity at the start of our relationship, and we'd agreed. Or at least I thought we had. Either we didn't define it well enough, or Tilly saw a loophole I couldn't. Now she wanted to move forward, to stay married, as if nothing had happened. The emphasis was on helping me move through my pain, almost like she was skipping over the accountability part. Probably because she didn't even think what she did was wrong. So what now? I loved Tilly. I'd always loved her. We were on the same page about almost everything except for this. Our lives were so tightly intertwined that pulling them apart would be a nightmare. Separating would be painful and complicated on every level. We were best friends. We had 2 small children who adored us. Our families were close and loved both of us deeply. We shared a house, a vacation home, investments, retirement plans, and countless dreams we'd built together. Divorce would destroy all of that. But if we did divorce, I could regain my self-respect. Maybe, just maybe, I'd find a partner whose values aligned better with mine. It wasn't guaranteed, of course, but I'm a decent guy, reliable, sincere, hardworking. There had to be women out there who would appreciate that enough to stay faithful. Still, Tilly's betrayal had struck me deeply. I couldn't fathom how she thought it was okay to cheat on me. And while she seemed genuinely sorry for my pain, she hadn't once apologized for sleeping with those men. She just kept saying, "It didn't mean anything." The searing pain I'd felt last night had subsided a little, but I knew it would come back, stronger and sharper each time. Feelings of inferiority, rejection, and humiliation were like waves. Momentarily quiet but always building, ready to crash. I hoped they'd fade over time, but I didn't share Tilly's belief that they could be healed. And trust? Trust was the foundation of every relationship. Without it, there's nothing. I had trusted Tilly completely. I'd honored my promises to her. She hadn't done the same for me, and now our marriage was unbalanced, tilted entirely in her favor. I couldn't see a way to restore that balance. I didn't cheat on her, not because I'm a saint, but because intimacy for me wasn't just physical. It was emotional, a connection. If I cheated, it would mean I no longer cared about our commitment. And that's exactly how I saw Tilly's actions, as her rejection of our bond. I wanted her to convince me why we should stay married. Because right now, I couldn't see it for myself. I sat at the kitchen table waiting for Aaron. I'd showered after he left, had a piece of toast with rhubarb jam his mother had sent us, and tried not to think too much about what had happened. But my thoughts raced anyway. How could I make him see what mattered? Our marriage, our family, those were the priorities. A few nights with Randy or that salesman were nothing compared to that. Not even close. It had been a couple of hours since Aaron left when I heard the garage door open. My heart leapt. I quickly put my plate, knife, and coffee cup in the dishwasher and hurried to the family room. We couldn't have another conversation sitting stiffly at the kitchen table. The family room was where we kept our photos, the girls' toys, mementos from our honeymoon, and heirlooms from our parents. It was our warm, loving space. I sat in the middle of the sectional, making sure that no matter where Aaron sat, he'd be within reach. He needed to feel my love through touch. When Aaron walked in, he hesitated. I smiled at him, but he just gave me a formal nod and sat down in the seat closest to the door. His pain radiated off him like heat. I reached out cautiously, placing my hand gently on his shoulder. He didn't pull away. I gave it a soft squeeze, and then I felt her hand on my shoulder. It was warm, familiar, and heartbreaking all at once. "Tilly," I started, my voice raw. Her eyes filled with hope, but I wasn't sure how much of that I could give her. "I can't just move past this," I said. You say it doesn't matter, but it matters to me. You say it didn't mean anything, but it meant something to me. You broke promises, Tilly, and that changes everything. I know, she said, her voice trembling. I know I hurt you, Aaron, and I'm so sorry, but I love you. I love you more than ever, and I want to fix this. I want us to move forward together. I looked at her, my thoughts a whirlwind of emotions. Anger, sadness, betrayal, and, somehow, love. I still loved her, but I couldn't see a way back to the life we'd had before. I need time to think, I said, standing abruptly. I'll let you know when I'm ready to talk again. I reached out my hand and placed it gently on Aaron's arm. What are you thinking about, dear? I asked softly. He shrugged, avoiding my gaze. I just don't understand, he said flatly. I already told you, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. It's nothing, Aaron. Nothing at all. It doesn't matter. He let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head. It doesn't matter to you, Tilly. That's the problem. Aaron, I said firmly, leaning closer. You were here and I was there. It had nothing to do with you. It was meaningless. Meaningless to you, he repeated, his tone sharp with pain. But not to me. The weight of his words hit me, and for a moment, I couldn't speak. How could he still not understand? How could I make him see that what happened didn't affect my love for him or our family? I forced myself to smile, trying to lighten the mood. But, darling, how does that make sense? We can't be inseparable when we're apart, I said with a small laugh, hoping the banter might ease the tension. He didn't laugh. He didn't even smile. I thought we were inseparable, Tilly, he said quietly, his voice raw with hurt. Even when we were apart. That's how I've always seen us. I froze, stunned by the depth of his pain. Aaron, I said softly, my voice trembling. I'm sorry. I don't know what to do here. I'm trying to show you how unimportant this is. I feel like our marriage is at risk, and it's killing me to see you like this. I don't know what to say to fix this. Why did you do it? He asked, his focus still fixed on the physical act. I've told you, I said, my voice shaking. It just happened, Aaron. The circumstances came together, and it didn't mean anything. His shoulders slumped, as though the weight of my words had drained him of all energy. It didn't mean anything to you, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. But it means everything to me. Why? I asked, my frustration bubbling to the surface. It had nothing to do with you, Aaron. Nothing at all. If you hadn't overheard Ted last night, you'd still be happy with our marriage, wouldn't you? You know you would. And I'm still the same woman I was yesterday. I'm still your wife, still devoted to you and our family. Nothing has changed. He shook his head slowly, his expression a mix of sadness and disbelief. Everything has changed, Tilly. Everything. He looked as though he was about to get up, but I moved faster, wrapping my arms around him and pressing my forehead against his shoulder. No, I pleaded. Stay with me. We can fix this. We have to fix this. There's nothing to fix, he said, his voice cold. I see now that our marriage has always been out of balance. What are you talking about? I asked, my heart racing. Our commitment, he said. For me, it was complete. Emotional, intellectual, spiritual, and physical. But for you, it was never complete. You were committed to me emotionally, intellectually, spiritually, but not physically. We were never in balance, Tilly. I thought we were, but we weren't. And I don't see how we ever can be. That's not true, I cried, my voice breaking. I love you, Aaron. I love you more than anything. I know you feel it. I know you do. He shook his head. No, Tilly. You don't love me the way I love you. If you did, you wouldn't have cheated. His words cut deeper than I thought possible. Tears blurred my vision. Aaron, you must know how much I love you, I said, my voice shaking. You have to open your heart. My love is there. You'll see it if you just look. I don't think I want to look at what's in my heart right now, he replied, his tone distant. Trust your feelings, Aaron, I begged. Look into your heart. You'll see the truth of my love. He let out a heavy sigh. Love isn't the only thing I feel, Tilly. There's pain, anger, fear, and grief. So much grief. But why? I whispered, wrapping my arms around him again. He sat stiffly, unmoving. Let me in, Aaron, I begged. Let me in. We can heal this. We can. I'll heal, he said, his voice cold and final. And you'll no doubt be part of that process. But I don't see it happening right now. We're out of balance, Tilly. We always have been. I felt her arms tighten around me, but her touch no longer brought me comfort. Her words washed over me, but they didn't reach me. I stood up, gently but firmly disentangling myself from her embrace. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with tears, but I couldn't meet her gaze. I'm not making any decisions right now, I said, my voice steady but cold. I need time to think. I'll let you know when I'm ready to talk again. Her face crumpled, but I didn't stay to see her reaction. I turned and walked away, my thoughts a tangled mess of love, anger, and betrayal. Aaron stood up, releasing my hands gently. His voice was soft but resolute. Tilly, until I figure out if we can ever restore balance, I can't be with you. I'll pack a few things and let you know where I'm staying. Felt like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I watched him leave, his whole demeanor radiating defeat. My heart broke all over again. We had to fix this. I had to fix this. But he didn't seem to want to. I was upset, worried, and terrified. How could I reach him? How could I make him see that everything we built together still mattered? I checked into the residence inn again and sent Tilly a quick message. Checked in. I replayed our conversation in my mind, dissecting her words, what she said, and, perhaps more importantly, what she didn't say. For Tilly, emotional commitment was everything. She truly believed that sleeping with other men was inconsequential, something separate from her marriage to me. In her mind, she was still faithful because those encounters never touched her feelings for me, our children, or our family. Intimacy was, to her, compartmentalized, external. I never suspected her cheating because she had no guilt about it. To her, it was just a moment, a fleeting event like having drinks with friends. But for me, it was something far more profound. This fundamental difference in how we saw marriage was the chasm I couldn't bridge. I wanted to reconcile, I truly did, but I didn't see how. I'd never cheated on Tilly, so moving forward would mean accepting her betrayal and forgiving her for it. But that would always leave the scales of our marriage unbalanced. Worse still, her lack of remorse and belief that there are always exceptions in life left me questioning whether she might do it again. I knew I couldn't endure that. She didn't feel like she had betrayed me, but I felt it deeply. The pain seemed bottomless. How does one handle this? When the person you've built your life around, the person whose love is central to your very existence, seeks intimacy elsewhere, it shakes the foundation of everything. I screamed into the pillows that night, just as I had so many nights before. The pain needed an outlet, and this was the only way I could release it. It left me completely drained. I talked to my boss, Maxine, and gave her a general explanation. My marriage seemed to be ending, and I needed time to process it. She was understanding, as always, and simply asked me to check my email while I took care of myself. Despite everything, we still celebrated Tilly's promotion as a family. The girls' enthusiasm helped keep the dinner light and somewhat normal. Tilly and I worked together to put them to bed afterward, just like always. When the girls were asleep, I grabbed my jacket. "Where are you going?" Tilly asked, her voice trembling. "I don't know," I replied honestly. "I miss you. I miss you too. Can we talk about this?" "I don't think there's anything else to discuss," I said. "I know what you're thinking now, Tilly. I just need to figure out what I'm thinking. Come home, honey. Let's figure this out together like we always have. You know we make a great team." "It won't work this time, Tilly," I said softly before leaving. Every morning, I went to the house to get the girls ready for the day. Every evening, I returned after work to help put them to bed. We wanted to keep their lives as normal as possible, for as long as possible. Weekends were harder, but we managed. I showed up before Annie and Kylie woke up, though they could no longer run into our room and surprise us in bed. Yet, with everything else constant, they didn't seem to notice much had changed. But we noticed. I felt myself pulling further and further away from Tilly, and she felt it too. She begged me to come home to find a way to move forward. One night, after the girls were asleep, she surprised me. "Let's go to counseling, honey," she said, her eyes pleading. "We're stuck, and we need help. Otherwise, I'm afraid you'll leave us forever." It was ironic. She thought I was abandoning her, when all I felt was that she had never been fully invested in our marriage. But her suggestion gave me pause. Our different perspectives, I realized, were reason enough to give therapy a try. Tilly found a therapist, Dr. Brazenly, and after skimming online reviews and her qualifications, I agreed to give it a shot. Dr. Brazenly was an earthy woman, large but with lively, intelligent eyes and a soothing voice tinged with a slight accent. Her approach was indirect, but there was a quiet confidence in her demeanor that made me hopeful. She always took the time to explore her thoughts and feelings on any issue under discussion. But once the groundwork was laid, she didn't hesitate to ask the hard-hitting questions that went straight to the heart of the matter. Her language was articulate and precise, especially when it came to discussing emotions. It was toward the end of our second session when Priya brought us to a critical turning point. We talked about our history together and my recent discovery of Tilly's infidelity. There were no surprises for either of us, but Priya was shaping the contours of our marriage in her mind. "Correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems, Tilly, that you believe your promises to Aaron remain intact because being intimate with other men didn't affect your emotional commitment to him?" Priya asked. Tilly nodded and smiled. "Yes, and you, Aaron, believe that she broke those promises because, for you, they included physical fidelity, not just emotional commitment?" Priya continued. "Yes," I replied. "Tilly, you don't think you need to apologize because you don't believe you did anything wrong. Is that right?" Priya pointed out. Tilly frowned. "No, I'm sorry for hurting Aaron. I'm deeply sorry for that. I want him to forgive me for hurting him." "So, you regret being with other men because it caused Aaron pain?" Priya clarified. "Exactly. I'm very sorry about that. I never meant to hurt my husband," Tilly responded. "Aaron, how do you feel about what Tilly is saying?" Priya asked, turning to me. "I know she's sorry for hurting me. She's not a monster. She knows she hurt me badly, and she's made it clear she's sorry for that. But she's never apologized for the actions that caused this pain because she doesn't consider them wrong. And that's the problem," I said. Tilly exclaimed, "I'm really sorry about that. I didn't mean to hurt you, Aaron." "It's Aaron's turn to share his thoughts and feelings. You'll have your chance too," Priya intervened. "No, I'm done," I continued. "She only regrets those actions because they hurt me. She doesn't see them as a betrayal in and of themselves. I do, and that tells me she could do it again. I don't know if I can get past this pain now. It would destroy me if it happened again." "I won't do it again," Tilly insisted. "Tilly, you're a wonderful, smart, warm woman. But you believe in exceptions and choices. For you, there are no absolutes, right? I continued. But for me, physical fidelity is an absolute. It always has been. And that's why it hurts so much to find out you don't feel the same way. That's what our marriage meant to me. And if I have to defend myself against you, then that's not the marriage I want. You're not a bad person, Tilly, but I don't think you're the right wife for me. Darling, please give me a chance. I can do this, Tilly pleaded. Can you really believe that there will be no exceptions for the rest of your life? That under absolutely no circumstances would you ever consider being intimate with another man? Tilly had always been honest, maybe not fully transparent, but honest. And I saw in her eyes the exact moment when she thought about possible exceptions. And she saw in my eyes that I saw it. I think we both knew at that very moment that we were done. I can't believe we're divorced, Tilly reflected. Aaron and I were soulmates, absolutely perfect for each other. But now we're no longer married. I witnessed this from the very beginning of that terrible night in the hotel, and every day since, it felt like we were falling deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole. I still can't fully understand how it all happened, and all because of the most insignificant reasons. I had never given anyone even a fraction of the love I felt for Aaron. Never. I was certain that counseling would help us. Priya helped us see our differences, but where I had confidence we could overcome them, Aaron saw no way forward. And it seemed like he just stopped trying. I begged and begged him to come home, to make love to me, to trust in the cocoon of love we had built for ourselves and our children. But he was adamant. I see possibilities. I've always seen them. I'm creative. So when Aaron asked me if I could ever see an exception to staying true to him, of course I could come up with one. In fact, I came up with several almost immediately. Plane crash victims forced together to survive, saving someone's life, or even a consensual partner swap with Aaron's approval. Perhaps even a moment of sudden, uncontrollable passion. I'm sure I could come up with more, but these were exceptions by definition, highly unlikely scenarios. I tried to explain this to Aaron, but he cut me off. The chance is not zero, Tilly, and with every possible exception you add, the overall risk of you being with someone else again increases. I can't live with this hanging over our marriage. I can't. You've destroyed me, Tilly. I don't have the strength to survive another blow. And so he destroyed me in return. I was depressed for months after he filed for divorce. But I had to pull myself together every single day to support our daughters, to win clients for our firm. I didn't have the luxury of falling apart. I felt discouraged, but since I'm a firm believer in the fake it till you make it philosophy, I put on my best face every day. Still, the nights alone in my bed were brutal. When Aaron took the girls, our custody arrangement alternated weeks. I found myself eating pint after pint of mint chocolate chip ice cream and crying more than I care to admit. It wasn't easy for Aaron either. I knew him so well, and I could see the deep sadness in him. His usual cheerful and easygoing manner was gone. When he wasn't speaking to someone, he seemed distant, lost in thought. No matter how often I begged him to come back to me, he refused. Eventually, I realized that he would have to return to me of his own free will. Nothing I said or did would make a difference. And perhaps then, I truly understood how much I had hurt him. Aaron had always trusted me, turned to me for advice, valued my opinions, at least until then. But now that trust was shattered. By the time I was ready to date again, Randy had long been fired. He also went through a divorce. His wife, Trish, had heard Aaron's revelations loud and clear that fateful night. Randy had been caught off guard and couldn't spin the news in a way that salvaged his situation. His divorce went much worse than ours. While Aaron and I had separated amicably and worked to remain friendly for the sake of our children, Trish gave Randy absolute hell. They also had young kids, but she won full custody and left him with the bill. Randy eventually left our company when a sales manager position opened at a competitor. The job required him to move to Chicago. I felt sorry for him. And for myself. That night wasn't worth the price any of us paid. At work, I didn't face any real consequences. I gave Jim and Frank a sanitized version of the reasons for my divorce and assured them I wouldn't put the company at risk again. They expressed disappointment, but since I was making money for them, I suspect they turned a blind eye more out of pragmatism than out of any personal loyalty toward me. About a year after the divorce was finalized, I started dating again. As soon as news of my impending divorce broke, men began asking me out. But it took me a full year to accept that my marriage was truly over. I felt unbearably lonely, so I dipped my toe back into the dating pool, agreeing to lunch dates with a few different men. I didn't sleep with any of them, though I was tempted. Deep down, I still hoped Aaron would come back, and I wanted to be able to tell him I had remained faithful. The irony was not lost on me. I hadn't stayed true during our marriage, but I was staying true after it ended. Intimacy with others had never mattered much to me, but it clearly mattered to Aaron. I wanted to have something of value to offer him if he ever decided to come back. About a year after our breakup, Aaron seemed to have found his footing in life. I didn't know if he was seeing anyone. We never discussed dating. Though I never asked our daughters directly, their stories about time spent with Aaron didn't mention any women. When I saw him, he seemed settled. Maybe not entirely happy, but at least content. At that point, I gave up hope for us. Letting go helped me open up to other people. And that's when I met Bob. We met through work. Bob had a family office, and I successfully convinced him to use our services. To celebrate the deal, I invited him to dinner, and later he invited me to another dinner to talk more personally. Bob had been widowed for 4 years. He was 10 years older than me with no children, not because he didn't want any, but because his late wife had been unable to conceive. He mourned her deeply for 2 years and had slowly begun to open his heart again. I could relate to that. Bob healed me in many ways. I'll always carry the scar of Aaron's rejection, but Bob was gentle, considerate, and funny. He wasn't conventionally handsome, just ordinary, not particularly tall or short, not striking in any way, but his heart was big and warm, and it enveloped me completely. He also saw things in shades of gray, and I found comfort in that. I can't imagine how a perfect marriage could be ruined by a couple of minor incidents of intimacy, he once told me. I didn't have the heart to explain just how deeply those incidents had hurt Aaron, or how they had destroyed us. When Aaron and I were married, I had never imagined what it would feel like for him to move on first. I was nervous, almost terrified, about how he might react when I told him that Bob and I were planning to move in together. But the conversation turned out to be an anticlimax. Aaron was polite. "I'm glad you found someone, Tilly," he said, smiling genuinely. "You've always had great taste in partners, so I'm sure he's a good person." I couldn't stop myself. I rushed to hug him, but he tensed in my embrace. In that moment, a part of me died inside. I knew he would never let go of the pain I had caused him. Bob and I eventually bought a 4-bedroom house not far from where Aaron and I had lived. We wanted a fresh start. During and after the divorce, I had stayed in our old house to keep things as normal as possible for the kids. Aaron bought a 3-bedroom apartment nearby, not far from where we used to live and still in the same school district. The kids transitioned to having Bob in their lives almost seamlessly. I think it was mainly because he was easygoing and approachable, and because Annie was still a couple of years away from her teenage rebellion. I still think about Aaron often. I want him to be happy. Hopefully, one day he will be. I try not to dwell on the what-ifs. What if I had been more flexible? What if he had been more open? What if he had let me help him heal? But then, I remind myself that he probably wouldn't have been Aaron, my ideal partner, my almost perfect partner, if he had been different. I met Bob only briefly and never exchanged more than polite pleasantries with him when picking up or dropping off the girls. He seemed like a decent guy, maybe a little boring, which, given Tilly's personality, I found kind of amusing. We finally had a real conversation at Kylie's 8th birthday party. I was the only dad there, aside from Bob. Tilly and a few other moms were busy keeping an eye on the dozen or so little girls running wild in the yard. Neither they nor the kids needed us two old guys getting in the way. So we sat in folding chairs on the patio, watching the chaos unfold. We talked about the Twins' latest dramas, speculated on the Vikings' chances that season, and complained about last week's oppressive heat. When we ran out of safe, neutral topics, we sipped our Molsons in companionable silence for a moment. Then Bob broke the quiet. "I don't want to embarrass you, Aaron, but how could you let Tilly go? I mean, look at her. She's beautiful, smart, funny, an amazing mother, an incredible cook, and an even better lover. She's the whole package." I had thought about this question countless times since our marriage ended. He wasn't wrong. Tilly was an impressive woman, but she had also torn me apart. It had taken years of therapy to realize that I was better off without the doubts she had brought into my life. A partner should make life easier, smoother, and more fulfilling. They should lift you up. Doubt, though, it's insidious. It poisons every moment, every interaction, and adds stress instead of removing it. Couldn't live with it. For a long time, my sadness over the loss of my marriage had blinded me to this truth. But now I could see it clearly. I shrugged and answered simply, "We just weren't the right partners for each other." Bob shook his head. "I'd like to think I'd fight for someone like her rather than let her go." "Well, I hope you never have to find out," I said with a small smile. He didn't understand, and that was fine. I smiled again and took a drink from my bottle. Watching him with Tilly that day, I realized they were a better match than Tilly and I had ever been. That thought didn't bother me, despite the pain her betrayal had caused me. I didn't want her to suffer. She had never intended to hurt me. She just wasn't the right partner for me. Besides, I had my own secret. I met Deardra about 9 months ago. Since my divorce, I've been focused on self-improvement, taking cooking classes, joining a book club, and buying a road bike. That's how we met, on a group ride. We were traveling at the same pace, so we naturally ended up riding together. At the end of the ride, we sat next to each other for coffee. 2 weeks later, we did it again. She was witty and knowledgeable about topics that also interested me, so I invited her to walk through the art museum with me. Afterward, we went to lunch. That led to dinners, movie nights, and eventually evenings spent together. Deardra was a project manager at Verizon. She'd been divorced for 6 years and had a 10-year-old daughter, putting her somewhere between Annie and Kylie in age. Tall and slender, she exuded playful energy most of the time but was all business when it came to getting things done. Exactly what you'd expect from a project manager and essentially a single mom. Her ex-husband saw their daughter once every 2 weeks, so she handled almost everything on her own. She was hyper-organized, a little bossy, and refreshingly direct. We shared an unexpected number of interests. The Strokes and Muse were on both of our playlists. Pulp Fiction was at the top of our favorite films list. She loved it for Uma Thurman, and I loved it for Willem Dafoe. Politically, we were pragmatically progressive. It's hard not to be in Minnesota. When we were together, time seemed to pass without us noticing. And perhaps most importantly, we were both staunch proponents of monogamy. We kept our relationship low profile, mainly to make sure we were truly compatible before involving the kids. I didn't know how long Tilly had dated Bob before introducing him to the girls, but I wanted to be absolutely certain about Deardra and me before taking that step. We were almost ready to take the next step. A couple of weeks ago, Deardra and I drove to Duluth to meet my parents at their summer cottage. She charmed them completely, and we left feeling confident in their support. We didn't want to overshadow Kylie's birthday, so we decided to wait until next week to tell our daughters that we were planning to move forward as a couple. We weren't sure exactly when we'd have our first in-person family meeting with all the kids together, but it wouldn't be long after that. So what's next? Who really knows? The end of my marriage to Tilly was every bit as painful as I had feared, but on the other side of that terrible journey, I felt both stronger and wiser. With Deardra, I feel safe and completely settled. No matter how I look at our relationship, whether through the lens of experience, hope, or practicality, it feels true, balanced, and built on mutual understanding. And I like our chances of keeping it that way. What do you think of today's story? To me, it seems clear. Before you take any actions involving the opposite sex, it's crucial to discuss and agree on the boundaries of what is permissible with your partner. If something feels normal to you but not to them, it's off the table. Period. Respect for each other's boundaries is what keeps relationships healthy and strong. If you enjoyed this, subscribe to JK Tells a Story for more tales.